What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV, man. So a while ago, I want to say a year ago, I remember this comment vividly. I made a video and I was talking about Chicago, and I was basically talking about, I think I was talking about how, there isn't everybody in Chicago not running around as demons, right? Every young dude in Chicago is not a demon. Every young black man in Chicago is not in the streets shooting gang banging. It's working class individuals like myself that's been born and raised on the south side of the city, and some individuals that been on the west side of the city that's in east side, north side, wherever. They're just working class people. They're just trying to make an honest living, go home, take care of our people, have a good time when we want to and we can, and just, try to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And then in me talking about that, because I know Chicago gets a terrible reputation due to the drill music that comes out of the city and the stuff that goes on amongst these gangs and, in different sides and different hoods in the city. I spoke about, how Chicago gets this crazy rap, and I talk about, how I went to school with, y'all know Mimo 600, Chicago rapper. And I talk, shout out to Melvin, Mimo. I went to school with him, and somebody asked me, man, how can you go to school with an individual like that and still basically come out okay? How is there people like you walking alongside of like, no disrespect to Mimo or nobody, but he was just talking about like street dudes in Chicago that be in these raps. How am I living amongst these individuals, and how basically I didn't turn out like them? And the answer to that is simple. It's layered, I believe, but I mean, for one thing in particular, I grew up with structure in my household. My mother, bro, like everybody know my mama, everybody looked at my mama like the warden in my family. Like my mama didn't play, bro. Seriously. My mother, I was raised in a single parent home, but my father had been in my life since I was born, right? So I could go to my father any house anytime I wanted to. He come get me from school, come get us from school. We come spend a night over there. Like it was no problem. My father had been in my life for forever, since the very beginning. So just like my mom has, of course. But like I said, I grew up in a house with structure. I never confused my mother for my friend, and I thank God for that. My mother wasn't the mother who was interested in being our friend. She talked to us about a whole lot of different things. She basically brought a lot of things to us, letting us know what certain things were, so we wouldn't get into it and all that, and wouldn't go into the wrong path or go down the wrong route, especially as a young man in the city. But she never tried to act like she was our friend, right? I knew that was my mom, and the lines weren't blurred in that relationship. A lot of the young youth you see running around in Chicago, either their mothers are too busy at work and they can't keep a hand on them, or their mothers really aren't really the best mothers, so they get raised by their grandmother, and grandmama too old to really keep a hand on them. That's the situation with Chief Keef. His mother was young. She wasn't the best mother. She will tell you that her and her son have a best friend relationship. They're more like friends than mother and son. That was never the case with my mama. My mama, a lot of these young dudes that you see running around in the city, their parents let them smoke weed in the house. Some of them smoke with their parents, teenagers. Their mama okay with them dropping out of school, in high school. It was none of that shit going on in my household. My mama, we would get in trouble for bringing home C's, for real. We couldn't really bring home C's like that. And we maybe one, but we ain't bringing a whole report card full of C's. That was not okay. My mama, we wasn't cussing in the house with my mama. We was doing, making sure I'm taking out the trash, washing the dishes, all of that. My mama wasn't playing with us, and my mama can curse Cat Williams. My mama and my daddy. But, but it was structure. But most importantly, also it was love. Love from my mom, love from my father, right? They always told us they loved us. My father, even as a father, like I told you, my father's a man's man. Always been a man's man, right? Just certified one of the most manliest men I ever known in my life. He was never afraid to show us affection. He was never afraid to tell us he loved us. He was never afraid to hug us. None of that, right? And he wasn't living in a house with me. But he still did that every single time he seen me and my siblings and all of that. It was what it was. Like, my mother took us outside of the neighborhoods. I didn't live in some of the craziest neighborhoods, y'all, in some of the most popular neighborhoods that y'all see from Chicago drill culture. I didn't live in Drill City. I didn't live like a 4-minute drive from O Block. I didn't live on the low end. I didn't live on 48th in Indiana. Like, I didn't live, my mama in front of Robert Taylor Project House, and I didn't been in a lot of different wild hoods. But despite us living in those areas, my mother made sure that we didn't only see the hood. My mother worked for United Airlines when I was a kid, so she would take us to trips to go see our cousins down south. Because my mama, she flew for free because she worked for the airlines. We would go down south to go see my cousins in Birmingham, Alabama. We would go to Disney World. We would go to Minneapolis to the Mall of America, or is it Bloomington, I believe? Yeah, but close to Minneapolis. We would go to Mall of America. My mother would take us, like I said, we would go to Disney. We would go to all different, we would go downtown. We would go to the museum. We would go to the Shedd Aquarium. We would go to, all these different places, Hyde Park area, for us to see the city and see that it was more than just the hood going on. So in my mind, I didn't think that, oh my God, my life is just limited to this. All it is for us is just being in a block and this is all we gonna ever have. My mama, nah, it wasn't like that. Furthermore, man, my mother and father, man, like, I never wanted to misrepresent them. My mother and father were good people. I never wanted to make them look bad in their parenting. I never wanted to have them look like, oh man, they ain't raising that boy worth a damn. I ain't never want nobody to say that when they seen me. And my siblings didn't want nobody to say that about them either, right? My mother and father worked hard as hell. They wasn't finna be out here having a nah, man. My mama told us, don't play with my name. Don't have don't be out here embarrassing us. And not even just embarrassing us, don't embarrass yourself. Okay? So my mother and father instilled in us to be leaders and not followers. So it was like I never had the option to be into some bullshit because one, my mama always knew where I was at. And then for two, even though we was living in these hoods, the other people on the block knew my mama wasn't going for that. They knew it. Your mama is not playing. Your daddy is not playing with you, boy. It was never nothing like that. It was never no blurred lines. I was never like my father's friend. Like, no, he was a disciplinarian. Listen, this is what it's gonna be. You listen to your mama, you listen to me, you listen to your grandparents, you listen to your aunts and uncles, and it is what it is. You do what you gotta do in class. So I came from an environment of structure. I came from an environment of love. We was love was shared amongst us. So I wasn't attracted to the street life because I knew my father and them also didn't hide they didn't not talk to us about certain stuff. They told us basically the pitfalls that a lot of people in the city, a lot of young men in the city, right? They told us what would happen, what would be the consequences of getting in the street life. At a young age, I knew if you gonna either die or go to jail. I didn't want to do neither of the two. So that was the difference, man. A lot of the young shorties that y'all see, their mother's not in the house with them like they supposed to be. Some of them not the best moms at all. Some of them and some of them getting raised by their grandparents who really can't. They're too old to really watch them and tell them yes or no to really discipline them in a way where they would get it and really they would retain it and really be like, I'm scared to go out and do this because my mama gonna whoop my ass. I had a fear my mama was gonna kick my ass. I had a fear my daddy was gonna kick my ass. They ain't play like that. You know what I mean? And what's crazy is my father never whooped me in his entire life, right? Because I wasn't a bad kid. However, I did do some little stuff with my mama, and then my mama had to whoop my ass a few times, right? But other than that, I was just a good kid in the Mad City. So, like Kendrick Lamar was, and excuse me, I'm gonna get something in my eye. But yeah, my father would really, they instilled leadership qualities in us to not go down that route, and they weren't afraid. They weren't trying to shelter us from we didn't have blocks on the TV and stuff to let us not know what was going on in the world. We knew what was out there. They told us what were the consequences of doing this, that, and the third, and how we shouldn't do it. And it was what it was, man. But it was never no way I was gonna be. I didn't smoke or drink. They strayed me away from. They told me the pitfalls and all of that type of stuff, and they made us too scared of them to ever go against their teachings. I was too afraid for that, man. I was too afraid to go against their teachings because I know what was gonna be waiting for me if I did. I knew there were going to be real consequences and repercussions. It wasn't going to be no, I'm just saying something to say it. I knew my people was for real when they said it. You know, and I basically broadened my horizons from, you know, my mom and my dad. My mom and my dad had me in a magnet school. Now, my school was in the hood in Princeton Park, over there on 93rd and Princeton, by 95th and the Dan Ryan, by the red line. But I was at a magnet school, Turner Drew Language Academy on 93rd and Princeton, right? Where I learned Russian from kindergarten to 3rd grade, French from 4th to 8th grade. The curriculum was very strong. I knew how to write a paper before I really got to high school. I learned how to type without looking down. They put me in we was living in a hood, but my mama made sure that we were in structure and everywhere we went. My mother and my father, I would say. My mother and father both made sure that we were in a structured environment, because the school that I went to was a school that my grandmother, my father's mother, formerly taught at. So that's how we even knew about the school. And my dad would go. My dad went up there to register us, put us up in there, make sure we was cool. On times we took the school bus, but on times we couldn't. My father come up there. My daddy would come up there on report card pickup, getting our grades and all this and all of that. And we knew that we couldn't play with our parents like that. So I would say that, and my people were good people. I came from a good family. My people weren't, you know, street dudes that was trying to perpetuate street behavior on us. I didn't have a daddy in the streets that basically tried to pass me. I didn't have a daddy that was in the streets that other people were looking at me to be like him. My father was a hardworking man. He was a cable contractor, man. And, you know, so I didn't have a street daddy to look up to that wanted to idolize to do street shit, like maybe a Dirk and one of them used to. Dirk's father is now a reformed man, Islamic man of faith that's trying to restore change. But, you know, his dad was formerly in the streets. Excuse me. And a lot of young dudes in the city, man, their dad were street icons or street legends, and they want to look up to their father and rip and run the streets and be wild like them. And they spiral out of control trying to be an image of a man who's probably is deceased or in jail. My father was not deceased or in jail. He was alive, he was present, he was active, and my mother was as well. So we were raised the right way with structure, discipline, and love. And that's why I didn't turn out like the other dudes, the gang members in Chicago.